Hi! Today I want to talk about love from a Torah perspective. Previously we have defined love as what's important to you is important to me. And we spoke about how you don't have to have shared interest to have a healthy marriage. You just have to show interest in the thing that's important to the other person. But I had promised you a second definition of love, and today, on the day that the world celebrates love, we'll talk about that a little bit, because what is love? And what do people even know about love? We're taught so many things in the secular world about what love is, but yet how many people actually seem to have healthy relationships and who seem to really know what love is? Not that many. So let's talk about love. You see, love is not something that you're a victim of. It's not something that just happens to you. Either you're lucky in love or you're unlucky in love. No, love is a choice. Love is something that you create. It's something that you cultivate. Love is an action verb. It's a choice that you make every single day. You see, I did not marry for love. I married and then I loved. It was a choice that I made every day and a choice that I still make every day. How do you choose to love? Love is a commitment to find, focus on, and define a person by their virtues and not by their shortcomings, by their strengths and not by their weaknesses. Because all of us are multidimensional. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, we all have positives, we all have negatives. We all have things about us that are easy to love. They come naturally for us to love those things about ourselves and about other people. And then we have things that are harder to love, things that we maybe wish we didn't have, or we wish we were different in some way, or we wish the other person was different in some way. And we can look at those things and we could compare that person to someone else, or we could be disappointed that they don't excel in the areas we hope they would excel in. And we can be so focused on the things they're doing wrong that we start defining them by their weaknesses instead of looking at the person and recognizing the strengths that they have, recognizing the things they're doing right, recognizing their virtues, recognizing their greatness, and focusing on that and defining them by those positive traits, because everybody has both. What we choose to focus on is the way we will define the person, and that is going to determine the relationship we're going to have with them. So if we can stop and find the positive, focus on it, and then we define the person by those positive traits, by their strengths, by their virtues, that is how we come to love them. And if we focus on the negative, that is what leads us to resentment, and the relationship can spiral downward. You see, when we can focus on the positive traits of our spouse, then they feel loved and they feel respected. When they feel respected, they want to act like a respectable person so that we keep respecting them, and they respond with love. And when we feel loved, we feel respected, and we want to keep acting like a respectable person to get more respect from them. It is a virtuous cycle upward. And the opposite is true too. If we focus on the negative traits, the person never feels good about themselves, and they never feel good enough. And this really affects their self-esteem, so they don't want to perform well. And then we get even more frustrated with them. And then we start defining them by the things that they're doing wrong, and they don't feel respected, and they certainly don't feel loved. And then they can't respond with love, and they can't respond with respect. And then we have a vicious cycle downward. Now, we are taught about love a few times in the Torah. One of the places that is the most well-known is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to love another person the way you love yourself, which is an implication that in order to really love someone else, we have to be able to love ourselves. That means that this exercise of finding, focusing on, and defining a person by their strengths and not by their weaknesses has to first apply to ourselves. We have to take a look at ourselves. Sometimes we're so critical of ourselves, and sometimes we judge ourselves so harshly and so negatively. We need to stop, and we need to find, focus on, and define ourselves by our virtues, by our strengths, by our positive traits, and not by our negative ones. And of course, the same rule applies for our children. Sometimes we're so critical of them, and sometimes we have certain expectations of them that we actually set them up for failure. And then they don't perform well, and then we're constantly disappointed in them. We have to stop, look at our children, each and every one of them, and we have to find, focus on, and define them by their strengths. And once you do that, watch how much better your relationship gets with them. You will see how much freer your love is with them, how easy it is to love them, how easy it is to appreciate them, how easy it is to compliment them. They will feel so loved, so respected, and so confident that they're going to want to perform even better. Now, this goes for our spouses, this goes for our children, and of course, this goes for ourselves. Now, of course, this leads us to the question, yeah, but how do I get them to change? Let's say they're doing something really wrong. Let's say they're not behaving in the way that they should, or let's say they're not living up to the standard of expectation that I had for them. How do I get them to change? Okay, first of all, we never ever start a sentence with, how do I get someone to do something? That's not our job. We don't get people to do anything. The only way to create change within our home and within another person is to influence that change, is to inspire that change. And we do that not only by being a model for that change, for that behavior, but also by focusing on what they're doing right instead of on what they're doing wrong. If we are always focused on what they're doing wrong, we start defining them by that. We start treating them as people that we are disappointed in. They don't feel respected, they don't feel loved, and they feel like a disappointment. This is terrible for their self-confidence, and therefore they could never reach their peak performance if they don't feel respected and loved and confident. So if we want to help somebody change, we have to first ask ourselves one question. Do I want them to change this behavior or this attitude or this performance because it's in their best interest or because I don't like it? If it's because I don't like it, that's very selfish, and only negative will come from that. If it's because it is in their best interest, then that is godly, and it's the most selfless thing we can do. But then we have to make sure we're doing it right by focusing on their strengths, building them up by the things they're doing right, not knocking them down by the things they're doing wrong. Because once they feel confident and loved and respected, they're going to want to perform at their peak. So they're not only going to keep doing the things that they're good at, but they're also going to be motivated to do the things that are harder for them to do. Now let's quickly talk about the love chain in the Torah. Where is the first place that we learn about somebody loving someone else? And that is with Abraham. Hashem tells Abraham to go take his son Yitzchak that he loves so much and to bring him up to the Akedah. So the first place we learn about loving someone is when Abraham loved Yitzchak. The second place is when Yitzchak loved Rivka. Then we have when Rivka loved Yaakov, and then when Yaakov loved Rachel. Do you see the chain over here? Abraham loved Yitzchak, so Yitzchak was able to love Rivka. Since Yitzchak loved Rivka, Rivka was able to love Yaakov. And since Rivka loved Yaakov, Yaakov was then able to love Rachel. You know the famous quote, hurt people hurt people? So I revised that, and I like to say, loved people love people. When you feel loved, it's so easy for you to love another person. But if you don't feel loved, then it's much more difficult to love somebody else. So what about somebody who didn't receive the love that they needed growing up, or they didn't receive love in the way that they wanted or knew how to receive love when they were growing up? Can they still love someone else? Absolutely. Let's look at David HaMelech. He had the most traumatic and difficult childhood and upbringing. He was rejected as a baby. He was abandoned by his parents, by his family. His whole life, people were out to get him and they wanted to kill him, including his own son. He spent his entire life running away from people who were pursuing his death. How could someone like that have grown up to be the leader of Klal Yisrael, to be the person who was so full of love for the Jewish people? And in the future, when Mashiach comes, the world will be in a state of complete love. No war, just peace. And David HaMelech is the ancestor of Mashiach. And all of that love will come from him. So how did he have so much love to give, and how was he so confident to be the king of the Jewish nation? I'll tell you how. Because he tells us himself in Tehillim the most beautiful, heartwarming words. He says, Ki avi ve'imi ya'azvuni, v'Hashem ya'asveni. My father and mother have abandoned me, but Hashem adopted me. Hashem adopted me. Those powerful words. Oh, how beautiful is that? He said, I wasn't able to receive the love that I needed, but Hashem gave me all that love. And David HaMelech spent his life tapping into the love that Hashem had for him. And by doing that, he was able to find, focus on, and define himself by his virtues, by his strengths, by his positive traits, so that he gained the confidence that he needed to become the person that he became. All of that because he tapped into the love that Hashem had for him. It's also very important to recognize that there may have been people in our lives who tried to love us in the best way that they knew how to. And it may not have felt like love, and it may not have been the love that we needed to receive. But if we can stop for a moment and focus on the fact that they really did try to love us, then we might learn how to receive love in a way that other people who do love us are trying to give it. And when we do that, we shift our mindset a little bit so that we can learn to feel the love that people have been offering us, even though we may not have been able to receive it in the past. So let's focus on the love that people have been trying to show us, whether we were able to receive it or not. Let's focus on the love that Hashem has for us, the unconditional love that he showers us with every single day. Let's tap into it and bring that love into ourselves. And then we will be able to find, focus on, and define ourselves by our strengths, by our greatness. And when we live with that confidence, we will become those people who can transfer that love to others, and that we will be able to find, focus on, and define all the people in our lives by their strengths, by their greatness, and not by their weaknesses. And then we will perpetuate the love chain from generation to generation, because loved people love people.